I'm Shannon,
And I'm Mark.
and this is Dirt Sailor the Podcast. On this episode of Dirt Sailor the Podcast, we welcome back Mark. Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Well, a delayed Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
How are you doing on this fine day?
Well, doing pretty good. Feel very happy to be alive.
Then I am happy that you are alive.
Had a couple of interesting weeks, I would say. Actually, maybe the last 4 since September 6th through about now.
What happened?
Well, I woke up one morning feeling great. Went to the doctor for some normal testing, fitness for diving, that sort of thing. Ended up in a hospital doing an angiogram. Angiogram would not have been successful. There was too many blockages in my arteries, so the doctors decided it was in my best interest to keep me in the hospital for a week and then perform what they call a cabbage or a quad bypass, which is all 4 major arteries were reconstructed with new ones. So I now have 3 arteries moved from different parts of the body, my heart, and 1 vein.
So one of the things that they found out is that you do, in fact, have a heart.
I actually have a heart. That is crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. Can't believe you actually had a heart.
Well,
But I'm glad that they took care of it. I'm glad they repaired it.
Well, we're currently on the road to recovery. We got a long way to go. We're just a couple, 3 weeks in, and it's going to be months, if not a year or so, before I'm fully rehabilitated. I've got my weight back on me because that's one of the byproducts of open heart surgery. You go one direction or the other. You either get really fat with water weight because your body retains pounds and pounds of water, or you lose pounds and pounds. And that's the direction that I went. I, in a 2-week period, lost approximately 14 pounds. So I wouldn't recommend this as a crash diet.
Because you could have a crash increase?
Yes, you could have a crash increase, but I was fortunate enough that I grabbed a hold of this thing, grabbed the bull by the horns once I realized that I was losing so much weight so rapidly that mentally and emotionally I decided to put a stop to it, if that makes sense. And I started double and tripling up on my food consumption and my water consumption to where finally 6 or 7 days ago, the weight loss stopped, and now I'm incrementally going back the other direction. So I've actually, in the last 5 days, brought myself back up by 4 pounds.
What really made you go and get checked by a doctor?
So I had a weird incident back in the month of June. There was actually a couple things that took place. Number one, my wife and I, your mom, were going to a bunch of seminars in Southern California. We're going to a local scuba show down there. And there just happened to be several seminars that spoke with and about divers that dive over the age of 60, which we happen to be. And the theme was basically how to stay safe, how to stay comfortable in the water, and why divers of our age die. And the gist of it was we don't stay physically fit, which I'm just the opposite. I'm very physically fit. And we get into a situation where we get into a stressor or two, and generally we have heart attacks. So believe it or not, I came back from that show about a week and a half to 2 weeks later. Going to work one morning, I had a weird feeling in my chest to where my heart actually slowed down. Most people, when they have heart attacks and angina and things like that, their heart races. Well, mine went from a normal beat of around 74 to 78 beats a minute when I'm just walking or resting to in the mid-40s.
Okay, and you weren't lying down, having just slept or anything that would have slowed your heart rate down. You were on your way to work.
I was on my way to work. I was walking across one of the parking lots. So I actually let it go. I had another incident like that mowing the lawn. So we decided to get with the doctor. The doctor prescribed, of all things, Pepsid, because he thought potentially it was heartburn, because I had had a surgery quite a few years ago where I had GERD or acid reflux, and potentially that surgery after 25 or 30 years had finally failed. Well, believe it or not, taking the Pepsid, it stopped.
So it would have appeared that it was, in fact, your surgery failing from all of those years ago and that you would now need Pepsid to help you out.
Correct. So my doctor, erring on the side of safety, decided he still wanted to send me to a cardiologist and go through all the testing as a fitness for diving.
So we're ruling out that it is, in fact, a failed surgery, or just in addition to, he's like, hey, since you are of age and you do this activity, let's just be cautious.
Go take a look. Let's be
Okay.
cautious and take a look. So I went to a cardiologist. They did multiple EKGs. They set me up for a echo cardio. I was set up for an ultrasound. I was set up for a calcium CT scan. And then the last one was treadmill. So looking at what we have now with our medical insurance called My Chart, as I'm getting the testing done, I did notice some percentages of one artery, what I thought was one artery, closed up. And I was just kind of putting that in the back of my mind. Well, after I did the treadmill, even though I powered through the test, the technician noticed that anomaly that I was having when I would walk to work. And I had that one incident. I had the incident at home.
Okay.
And he called it a PVC. It was a premature ventricular contraction, which means my heart rate would slow down. I get a couple extra beats and then speed back up. Well, I was actually going down to Southern California, back to SoCal to go to my boat, and I get a call from the cardiologist. Hey, Mark. Yes. Just want to let you know you're not having a heart attack. Well, it's good to know because I'm driving over to Grapevine right now. He said, however, we did pick something up on your treadmill. There's a couple things I need you to do for me. Yes, sir. What is that? I said, number one, I need you to stop at the closest pharmacy and pick up some Bear Baby aspirin. Start taking the dosages now until we see you in the near future. Second thing, as aggressively as you exercise, stop. Okay, got it. So approximately a week and a half later, I get a call from a local hospital. They've set me up for what's called an angiogram, where they're going to go in there and take a look and see if they can do an angioplasty, which is a balloon, or if they can stent the one artery. So we go through the procedure. You guys take me to the doctor. Actually, I drove myself.
Yeah, we allowed you to drive.
You allowed me to drive.
And then I showed up.
Yeah, we had no idea what was going on. So we in turn wait our turn. They lay us on the table, us being me.
And the mouse in your pocket. Did they let you have pockets?
They did. They didn't knock me out. They just relaxed me so I could talk to them or turn if I had to. Well, once they stuck the catheter in there and they started looking, I mean, this may be totally craziness, but I swear I heard there was 3 technicians helping me, the doctor and 2 techs. And I swear one of them looked at the picture and said, uh-oh. I mean, it sticks in my head for some reason. Well, they stopped the angiogram immediately and basically said, well, son, you're not going anywhere. Put me back into the waiting room, got me a room for the evening, and then the next morning, cardiologist or a heart surgeon shows up and commences to tell me that what they saw, they cannot unsee. And that's when they were going to start prepping me for surgery. And then at some point in time in the future, we'll go into maybe the particulars of what exactly took place. But I met the best surgeon and the best surgical group and nurses that I think I would ever want to be around or have them taking care of me, because I felt like I was treated like a king.
Are you glad you went in because of the heart rate drops that you had?
Well, 100%, and I know now there's 2 things that are buzzing around in my mind because this does play on your mind psychologically too because you don't go into depression. I've been doing some reading, and some people that have this quad bypass, they go into a depression and they really get messed up. I'm not, I wanna know why, what did I do, what could I do to fix it? But the doctor called me her miracle patient a couple times. And at 100%, that means that because of I'll give you the numbers. One artery was 100% plugged, one was 90, one was 80, one was over 75. I should not be here right now. I think of it as divine intervention. There's a plan. We'll wait and see.
Well, absolutely wait and see what that plan is.
But I'm very fortunate to be here, and I'm very fortunate to have been taken care of by that staff. And that brings me something that I'd like to say. I just went over pretty much everything that's happened to me the course of the last few weeks. One thing I realized is how many people love me, how many people prayed for me, and how many people I actually care about in my life. And there's a lot of them. I had people from outside churches praying for me. I had people from work praying for me. I had people I didn't even know praying for my safe surgery and quick recovery. And it also opens up the other side of that spectrum too. Even though part of my life's work has been to help people and do as much as I can without people even realizing it. And my pastor and I have talked about that a lot. I also realize there are some people that really are not going to garner any more of my time. I wish the best for them, but I will not waste another ounce of my life or breath for them. I'll just leave it at that. I had this whole litany of things I could, if this was a channel that we cursed on, I could really light into people and tell them, what about this? I did this. You did this. Not going to go there. And on that note.
So in your come to Jesus,
yes,
you realized just what was important and who is important.
Who's important in my life, 100%, and what is important. And like I've been told, there's a purpose here. I just have to be patient.
A patient.
Yes, at some point in time, I'll know and I'll see what I'm supposed to do from here on out. Because, even having quad bypass, now I'm going to live every moment like it's my last. And I don't mean I'm going to go out and act like a fool. I just mean that what's important to me now is my 10. And you know what I mean by my 10.
Yes. So I do want to say that the cardio, the surgeon that performed the surgery on Mark also reached out to my sister and myself to say that we need to make sure that we are on top of ourselves because she never wants to see us as a patient. And I felt that was very touching.
Absolutely. And it's an interesting thing that doctors have to separate themselves sometimes from their patients because they see so much pain with people and rehab, good surgeries, and maybe marginal things that people do after they have the surgery to recover. And she's there. She told me that we're going to have a relationship as doctor-patient, hopefully for the next 35 years. Well, being 60, that'll put me at about 95. And so I'm hoping so. And that's factual.
100%. And I did heed her advice. I did go to the doctor. I did have blood work run to check how my numbers are doing. My doctor responded today that said everything looks great so far with my lab work, and they will keep me monitored. But as of right now, everything is looking good, but did suggest dietary changes, and those dietary changes are almost exactly what we've been discussing as a family on how to keep ourselves healthy. and not overeating in this American culture of high salt, high sugar, high cholesterol meals that we tend to have.
And that's interesting you say that because that's one of the things that I thought we were doing. I've never been a perfect eater my entire life, but the last few years, I've gotten myself into really good shape. I thought we were eating really well. But then you start really diving into the sodium counts and the cholesterol counts on our Americanized food, and it's ridiculous. I mean, one of my favorite hamburgers in the world is a In-N-Out Double Double with onions. That hamburger by itself, and let me back up 1 inch, the recommended daily allowance is 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day or less for a healthy diet. And doctors, especially when you have heart things, want you to stay well below that. Well, that one hamburger has almost 1,500 milligrams. One hamburger. It's crazy. And let me spring a little bit to Southern California. It's a terrible thing that we always thought, or I thought in my life, that cancer was more prevalent in our life than heart disease. I did not have a clue that all my uncles down south that had heart surgeries had them for more than their smoking, drinking, and terrible eating habit. So apparently my great, great, great grandfather was the one that started all this. So we need to go have a talk with him someday.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We will have this conversation.
We will have this conversation with him. You know what? You might leave a note next time. Tell us what to look out for.
Right. Next to the family Bible, have the family book on this is what to look out for.
Yes, well, we're going to do our due diligence to make sure that I do everything I can to mitigate this from ever happening again, because unfortunately, the coronary artery disease is still there. The doctors have extended my life by giving me some clean arteries to work with. But if I don't take care of myself even better than I was, it can progress quite quickly into the exact same thing I just went through 3 weeks ago. Only I might not be so fortunate the next time because there's no more arteries to pluck.
I see. Well, we do need to maintain that healthy lifestyle. We need to make our changes. And as you said, we thought we were doing a lot of that already. Half your plate filled with vegetables, trying to do not overabundance of sweet sauces or an overabundance of oils or sugars or things like that, but keeping it veggie with a little bit of spice. And it would seem, even within our spices, something that I've noticed, things that you think are clean spices started to have a bunch of fillers in them. So your oils, making sure that you're using heart healthy oils. I wouldn't have thought twice about half the oils that we've used, using different oils for different things.
Yes, we've always heard that coconut oil was good for you, and then you read how it's not. It's so high in cholesterol, and it does bad things to your veins and arteries.
And nut oils,
Yeah.
not good for a heart patient.
No. Well, I guess the best diet is Mediterranean and just doing the absolute best you can.
Yes. And another thing that has been brought out, not to try to beat a dead horse, one thing at a time. You're not going to, if you choose to change your eating habits, don't think that you have to change every single thing all up front, all at once. Aim for one thing at a time. And when you get a handle on that, then switch to the next thing. So if your big thing right now is, let's even say sugar, you're trying to get your sugar under control. Okay, aim for something with lower sugars. Once you get used to that, okay, let's look at salt. Once you get used to that, just keep taking one step at a time, because it does look overwhelming as a whole, thinking that you have to change every single thing about your lifestyle. I will say one thing in our area, because we were already concentrating on some of the healthy eating habits, we did have steps in the right direction already. We had done some of the learning already. Now we have those little things, one step at a time, to learn.
Yes, and see, that's why these fad diets don't work. because you hit everything all at the same time, you lose the weight. But then 6 months after that, because you're not mentally prepared, you go right back
Right, so
to
it's
your
not
old
a
habits.
diet. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change. It
Absolutely.
has to be your lifestyle. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect all of the time, but overall, 95% of the time, you need to be on good footing.
Well, I'll tell you, being one of probably thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of heart patients now, because now I'm in an elite group, so to speak. All you got to do is lift your shirt up and look in the mirror, and you realize why you want to alter things. And the one thing you can't do is go back in the past. But if somebody has gone through it, just like mentoring, and they tell you why or suggest why you should make these changes, makes sense.
On that note, are you ready to jump back in to political, social, and worldly commentary?
I'm ready. And that's one of the things my doctor did tell me is zero stress, because going along with the diet and certain jobs, I have to try to take my stress down to zero. So now that we're still going to do the same commentary, which I'm good with because I love doing this, I have to look at these knuckleheads in a different light. So I'll make sure that I tell you how much I dislike them or how much they're wrong or how much they could learn from me. But I'm going to do it in a very calm voice, very calm tone. Just like today and yesterday, looking at what's going on in Congress again with these continuing resolutions and with the fact that we hire these people through elections, we pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they still can't get it right.
No, and I agree. And we're seeing it from both sides. Every so often, it's going to be the Democrats are not doing their job. And then right now, the Republicans are not doing their job. Then you go in when they switch again and the Democrats have control of the House and we say the Democrats aren't doing their job. If there's a continuing resolution, it means we're not doing our job. And this, though, it is not a Democrat problem. It is not an independent problem. It is not a Republican problem. This is a problem for the American people. We deserve to have individuals who come together as a whole and work for the betterment of the country. Part of that betterment is knowing where our money is going. We deserve to know how that money is going to be spent, and we deserve to have it done on a cyclical basis. Whatever the cycle is, not a continuing resolution cycle, but a budgetary cycle. Every budget that comes up, it needs to be put into play the whole time. None of this 2 months, 1 month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe kind of, sort of. And we deserve for them to work together because the vast majority of American people want the same things. There are little things we disagree on, but the vast majority of people want the same.
Well, I know one thing they agree on is they would like to keep their money in their savings accounts, in their 401ks, and in their retirements. And the way we're life limited, we can't continue to have these guys go in and pilfer
Raid the coffers.
our money on a regular basis. We have firefighters, police, nurses, construction workers, food service workers, and others. Just take all of the careers and jobs across America. And some of them can barely afford to make it from day to day. They can't afford their rents. They can't afford their fuel. Yet, if you look at the money we're sending to Ukraine, they are supporting their police departments, their fire departments. They're helping with border security. They're even helping people in dress shops to make dresses. I have zero against the Ukrainian people. I bet they're an awesome, awesome group. And it's unfortunate that, again, a border war has started. A conflict of personalities is going on right now. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying on both sides. Yet we're supporting it. And the folks that are the closest to them in the European theater are doing far less than we are. As a matter of fact, a bunch of them are rethinking the money because there's so much corruption there, and there's people being fired because the money they're being given to help take care of things is rapidly disappearing.
One thing I was surprised about is just how much we were helping Ukraine, and we're helping with all of the things that we don't help ourselves with, that we're having problems with at this time. But yes, as you noted, we're helping Ukraine with every facet of their life. But we're not doing the same for Maui. We're not doing the same for Florida. They just got hit, Florida by a hurricane, Maui by the fire in Lahaina. And there's actually been fires in other places in Hawaii. We are sending more money to Ukraine than we are to our own people to recover after devastation. And I understand I'm comparing a war to a natural disaster, but if we are so willing to rebuild their entire lives and infrastructure in Ukraine, why aren't we willing to do the same for Hawaii?
That has never made any sense to me why we don't take care of number one first, because if you're not healthy, then you're really not fit to take care of the rest of the world. And I wonder if Ukraine, never done the research, I wonder if they have a fentanyl problem there. Because I do believe that there's more Americans dying or close to it here of fentanyl overdoses probably than have died so far, if you believe the news outlets, in their war. But that number's skewed too, because you have some outlets in DC saying that Ukrainians are winning. You have other generals that are saying that Russia's thumping them and that they have killed hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian people, being troops and civilians. So what are we led to believe? Is this another wag the dog?
It would appear so. We don't get to know the truth. They don't want us to know the truth. Apparently, if we knew the truth, maybe they would lose support. I'm not really sure, because to me, if Ukraine if Ukraine is losing, would people say our money's not, is it throwing good money after bad? Because they're losing, if we continue to give it to them, they'll continue losing, and this is just not a way to spend it? Or if they really are winning, are we good at stopping the amount of funds we're sending, or should we send more because clearly what we're doing is working?
Well, here's where I have the issue. Are we really funding them to support them in this war? Or are we funding them because they really do have something on our current president and he is compelled to help? Otherwise, the cat will be out of the bag and we'll know what was truly done.
I'll actually go with you on compelled to help, actually. There was the funding 11th hour that we just talked about. Will they get the continuing resolution through? And magically they did. Now, the claim is there's no funding for Ukraine in there. However, when the fight was on and they were talking about a shutdown, Biden and his administration let everybody know that the funding for Ukraine will continue regardless of the continuing resolution. So the fact that we are willing to put Ukraine ahead of the entire United States, ahead of our own United States military, they lose funding, ahead of our own government employees because they lose their funding, we would happily, apparently, according to the way Biden has it set up, well, the way the government has it set up, is that all of the essential employees would still have to do their jobs without pay. And then they have to pass a little resolution to say whether or not people who got furloughed would get back pay. So, according to Biden, this won't impact Ukraine. Ukraine gets money no matter what. Ukraine first policy. As it stands, continuing resolution was passed despite Democrats' attempt to interrupt that ability to pass the continuing resolution. You had the Democrat whip request that they basically disband for the time period before a continuing resolution was passed. The nays had it, so they decided to keep at it. And it would appear that a few minutes after that, a certain Democrat from New York went and pulled the fire alarm in the building.
Would that be the Democrat that made the statement that he didn't know that was a fire alarm?
Not only did he not know it was a fire alarm, he thought he was doing an automatic door pull, but he apparently removed the sign that said emergency exit only before accidentally pulling the fire alarm.
Not only that, did you know he was a middle school principal and a teacher? And he knows exactly what those fire alarms look like and how they operate.
Are you sure?
I'm positive, and he's obviously not the sharpest tool in the shed. He would have known that there's cameras in there. What did he think? That he wasn't going to be seen?
I think people forget when you work with constant monitoring, but you don't actually see the camera wall. Even though, I mean, after January 6th, we should know that they had cameras, how many thousands of hours of footage, all of that, all over the entire Capitol complex. But I think he just forgot. He just forgot that they have cameras all over.
I guess that's possible, but how about instead of doing a childish move like that, why don't you guys stay in the halls of Congress, all of you combined, and do your job?
Which is what we want you to do.
Yes.
Republican, Independent, Democrat, you're paid to do a job. You're not paid to do sit-ins. You're not paid to do yell-outs. You're not paid to do all of this stuff that you do for show and apparently pulling fire alarms. You are paid to do your job. Part of that job, guess what? Go in there, still say no. Vote no. You did your job. Fire alarms so nobody else can do their job? Fire alarms so you get past the midnight deadline and you see people on furlough? Would that make you feel better?
If you feel compelled, vote the way your heart tells you. And actually, your heart, this can be a lot of hearts tonight. Your heart should be tied to your constituents. What do your constituents want? If they want you to continuously battle for no continuing resolution, never get anything accomplished, then vote the way they feel you should. And that's what made Pelosi and Boxer and Feinstein such powerful people is when they did get elected and they went back to D.C., I believe one of them's still there.
The only one that is still there for our good listeners is Nancy Pelosi.
And she says she's going to run again.
She has already tossed her hat into the ring to run again, but you know why she said she tossed her hat into the ring to run again? She needs to raise funds for the Democrat arm, because what they do is you think that when they're fundraising, at least I used to think this, okay, I want Nancy Pelosi to win. She does all her little dinners. She does the Act Blue, send me money, for my reelection. But since she basically runs unopposed in San Francisco and she doesn't really spend any money on her campaign, she takes all of those donation dollars and sends them to whomever else with the Democrats needs it. So she reallocates, and apparently that's legal, which I think it should not be. So she said, if you aren't running for re-election, you have no chance at getting that money. So what she's doing is running to get money for other causes.
Well, that's interesting because it'll probably go to her nephew.
When Biden steps out and Newsom
and we'll see,
gets
because he made the statement a few days ago that he would never do that. But, most politicians don't tell the truth.
He wouldn't run against Biden, but I'm sure he would.
Or you have to parse their words piece by piece. The DNC will take out Biden, and then Gavin Newsom and whomever.
Michelle Obama, if you believe the conspiracy theories that are out there.
I'll tell you one thing about the Obamas. Now, if you compare Barack side by side with this guy we have in office right now, Barack was actually pretty mellow.
True story.
compared to the socialistic and communistic things that this guy's doing. But I don't think, like we've talked multiple times, he has the mental capacity to know what he's doing.
Somebody else is pulling all
Somebody
of
else is
this.
pulling the strings. They're running this show. And that was the thing that was brought up. I'm not segueing, but staying kind of along the same format is with the passing of the senator.
Oh, Dianne Feinstein?
Yes. It was brought up that, well, maybe we need to look at term limits. You and I have beat that horse here. Yes, there should be term limits. She was about 109.
90, but
Yeah, and they
close.
say probably the last 2.5 terms. She didn't know what she was doing.
Even to this day, not to this day, because that implies the entire time. In her last term and a half, 2 terms, basically, she would forget who her colleagues were. She would forget what she was voting for. She would forget when she was supposed to speak, what she was supposed to speak about. When they were going through to mark whether somebody was present or absent, and all you have to do is say here, she launched into the speech that she was supposed to be making a little bit later in a meeting. And apparently, the day she died, she also did a vote for something. And unfortunately, she's deceased, so you can't ask her, but I bet you if you were to ask her, she'd have no idea what she even voted for. And that has been happening for years with her. Nancy Pelosi, she's a little bit, at least she's a little more there cognitively. But
She has her days.
But, I mean, at least she knows when to say yay or nay.
Well, that's why there's that magical pharmacist back there that says you would be surprised at how many of these congressmen and senators are on these psychotropic drugs to make them coherent when they're at some of these
meetings,
House and Senate meetings.
Yeah, look at McConnell.
Yes.
His 2 freeze-ups, I'm not saying 2 freeze-ups mean that you're done, but age-wise and longevity-wise, he should have been done too. Him, obviously Feinstein won't be there anymore, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and even though he's on the younger side, we have the senator from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fetterman. He's also suffering from a medical condition that is irrespective of his age. It is his actual medical condition that warrants him taking a step back, healing, and then if he heals, to come back and represent the people of Pennsylvania and the United States.
Yes, and if he's that good and that many people voted for him in his district, then they will vote for him again. But you know what? It's not fair to them. And it's not fair to us because he's one of 100 votes, correct?
Yes.
So he may not know what he's voting for, and that could be making decisions nation and worldwide that we don't need made.
Right. And when he was in inpatient treatment, and he was being seen by some of the best doctors, I believe Walter Reed has some pretty gosh darn good doctors. They look after our people. But when he was there, 100% on lockdown, pretty much only seeing his family because they wanted to make sure he got the appropriate treatment, he authored a bill. He authored a bill and introduced it into Congress. How is it that you're so medically incapacitated that you need inpatient treatment, and yet you're authoring bills and introducing them into Congress?
That's because they have warehouses of bills that they can just open up the filing cabinet, take one out, hand it to Mr. Fetterman, put his name on it, and send it forward. Just like when Mr. Obama took over as president, and then miraculously this 100,000-page change to the way we have medical here in America, Obamacare, just miraculously gets rolled out, which tells me they already had that thing in the pipeline. They were waiting for the right person that could help push it through, and then they pushed it through. Does it work? I don't know. Did it help people? Possibly. Is it the best thing? No, because my analogy for that was if you have a house that's 95% complete and you want to add a bedroom, you don't tear the entire house down for the 5%. You fix what's broken. And that's the interesting thing is, as we always say, these people cause the problem.
And then they say they are the
They
solution.
are the solution.
So let's go back to...
Nope.
No, let's not go back to... With John Fetterman, it was widely known that he did not like and does not like formal dress. Does not want to wear suits and ties, jackets, all of that. So he would show up to all of these little... No, what are they called? Little pressers, and he would be wearing shorts,
And baggy shirts.
baggy shirts, or a sweatshirt, a hoodie. Well, apparently, the Senate never actually had a formal dress code. It was kind of implied that it was formalized.
That you're in the most important house or chamber supposedly in the world.
Yes. And you will represent it thus accordingly. For guys, that was suits, ties. For women, that was business attire. Well, once it was figured out that it wasn't quite formalized, guess who showed up wearing the hoodies and the shorts? Fetterman. To the Senate floor. Apparently, what he would do before this came out that there was no actual formal attire required is that he would stand in the coat closet and poke his head out and vote from there. So he wasn't actually on the floor of the Senate. He would not go to the floor, but he would vote however he wanted to vote without violating the rules. Well, once it was told that it wasn't formal, then he would show up wearing the hoodie and the shorts or the t-shirt or sometimes a collared shirt, the baggy shirt. What did the Senate do? They actually decided to formalize, and they unanimously passed a formal dress code to make sure that it was on the record. So I guess he's going to go back to voting from the coat closet because shorts aren't allowed.
How about you just go to the store and buy you 3 or 4 suits and
He
just show
has
up in a
them.
suit?
He has them. The thought is that he mentally can't handle the clothes.
Oh, well, he does come from a very wealthy family, so I know he's used to wearing suits and ties.
You mean just like Hunter Biden? According to his ex-wife in her tell-all book, one of the things that she found out when she met him was that he keeps a suit and tie, or sometimes like the bow tie too, like very formal and semi-formal attire available to himself at all times because he never knows when he will get called to go to some gala, some party, some shindig that requires very formal attire. So he kept it on hand from a very young age because they know that that's the circles that they run in. So if you know that this is what is required of you, why would you even run for Senate? If part of your job, even if it's wearing formal clothes, I get it. There are things about clothing items that I think are stupid. I really do. But you know what? This is what you do to show your commitment to something higher than yourself.
Something more than you. Don't be so arrogant as to think that it's all about you, because when you go on that Senate floor, it's not about you. It's about the American people that you guys are representing. So if it's been commonplace for 100 years or 200 years to dress up, play the part.
Something that we saw this week, Trump is sitting in New York on trial for fraud. As a ruling from this judge before the trial started, just to kind of stipulate record, is that he lied about how much Mar-a-Lago is worth. And part of the misrepresentation, he said in some documents that Mar-a-Lago was worth $1.8 billion with a B, billion dollars. Now, mind you, Mar-a-Lago has many acres. It has a golf course. It has a hotel. It does have the private residence of Trump. It is a members.
Well, it's elite membership.
It has elite membership, so they collect millions of dollars from those members. The land alone would be worth one thing. The buildings, once you add it, the golf course, once you add that, the fact that it is waterfront property, oceanfront property in Florida. So the judge, though, said that it wasn't worth $1.8 billion, and in fact, it's only worth $18 million.
Pretty interesting that Mar-a-Lago generates over $20 million a year in revenue, yet it's only worth $18 million. How is that possible?
It's worth less than the revenue alone.
And why is a New York judge worried about a piece of property in Florida?
Because part of his business dealings in New York, when you get loans backed by some of your properties and things like that, is if you lie about how much assets you have in order to take out, say, a loan to run other businesses, that's part of their claim. Trump, though, through his attorneys, claims that they always put a caveat in their contracts that say, please go value it yourself. Don't take my word on it.
The lender's responsibility through their assessors, their estimators, and the people that go value property to do their own due diligence and make sure what the man or woman is in fact saying or stating is in fact true.
Yeah.
You can say your property's worth whatever. One interesting thing, though, is there is no victim here. This is a victimless crime because everybody has been paid back. All the banks have been paid back, all the loans, all of the construction companies.
So he didn't claim bankruptcy and then attempt to get out of anything
Nope.
on this?
That's why it's being called a victimless crime.
But I thought we hated big business anyway. Isn't this a good way for rich people to stick it to other rich people, if we're to believe this whole trial?
And according to a couple people in the know there in New York, this is pretty common practice by a lot of developers and wealthy people there, way overvaluing their property. However, it's worth what you can get for it.
And somebody might be willing to pay that for it.
And if a lending institution doesn't do their due diligence, that's not on you. That's on them. And who is this judge? Is he a real estate developer? Is he an assessor? Is he a financial planner? He can throw a number out there, but that doesn't mean that it's true.
Right. And why is his number any better than Trump's number or Trump's team's number?
Well, apparently all the properties around Mar-a-Lago sell for
more than $18 million.
$250 million to $1 billion.
There's an $18 million property for sale there, I believe, right now. And if I remember the details correctly, it's less than an acre. Doesn't have nearly the house size because obviously it's less than an acre. It's not a business. It's not waterfront. And it's still selling for $18 million. So how do you have a 20-plus acre property, business on it? You get dues-paying members. Even local real estate agents believed that alone the property should be worth at least $300 million.
What this is
this is
the machine not wanting this man to be able to run again. This is an organization that's like the mafia, and I guarantee you this is being directed by somebody in Washington, D.C. It's very interesting that all this stuff, every time something is found out about Hunter or something's found out about Joe, and it comes out in the news, that very same day or the next day, he's indicted for this. He's indicted for that. Just like in Georgia, you have the ability to question an election. Heck, Hillary has done it.
Yeah, she was a 2016 election denier.
The lady, and she denied it on the news day before yesterday, saying that there's going to be Russian interference again, and she's 100% certain that she lost the election because Putin interfered with her election.
And we went through that. It was a DNC, Hillary Clinton / DNC planted dossier and story.
So why isn't she indicted?
Right, for election interference.
Lady that ran for, I don't know, Senate, governor
of Georgia.
She's an election denier.
Right. 2018, I believe it was, and she has not conceded.
No.
She always said that she won. She has not conceded, and yet she's an election non-denier. You can deny elections as long as you're the right party.
Yes. And
In
this
this
is
country.
a this for that, tit for tat. Part of the population doesn't like Trump, so they're doing everything they can to destroy the man. Other part of the population doesn't like Biden or the Dems, so they're going out of their way to try to destroy him. But actually, if you look at the two individuals, there's one that's actually corrupt, and has done business dealings according to Congress with Chinese communists and actually taken money. Otherwise, why would you have 20 shell companies? And we don't have to go through that whole thing, blah, 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 blah. But he's actually the corrupt one. You have a developer in Trump that, did he fudge some numbers? Possibly. And what is happening now, too, is they're getting some of his old attorneys and some of his old business partners to actually roll, so to speak, because they're scared to death of the big machine taking all their money.
Because you will lose every time. You will lose every time against the machine. And even when you win, you lose because it cost you everything to prove you were right. And so unless you are willing to pay everything you have to prove your rightness, you're going to lose.
You're going to lose and you'll be broke,
Because
even if you're right.
These are government employees. These attorneys get an annual salary, and IRS agents, they get an annual salary. They can go after you every day. Let's just assume they're only working 40 hours a week. Every day, Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week for a year, 2 years, 10 years. They're getting paid for that. They get their salary. They're not losing. Even if they're wrong, they don't lose. But it costs you money to prove your innocence. And that is why some people give up and quit pursuing what is right, because it will cost them more than what they've already lost. And if you have the threat against you to lose everything that you have, even if you're right, what are you going to do?
Yep. That's why they have us by the short hairs, because we're not powerful as individuals to control anything.
So I will bring up, I'm going to Joe Biden, 2019, while he's running for president. It is claimed through our representatives in Congress that they have obtained 2 bank wires that reveal Hunter Biden received payments that originated from Beijing, and they were delivered, or the address listed as the beneficiary address was Joe Biden's home in Delaware. Does that mean that they were illicit payments? Does it mean it was quid pro quo? No, because at the time, through his many, many shell companies, Hunter Biden claimed to be doing business in China. We even saw Hunter Biden aboard Air Force Two going to China with Joe Biden conducting his business dealings there. However, the beneficiary address being Joe Biden's house, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Joe Biden's house. Classified documents. Joe Biden's house.
Maybe that's where the money came from. Maybe Hunter took some of those documents and faxed them over to China and they paid him for them. I don't know, just saying.
Text messages that are coming out as they go through all of the stuff from Hunter Biden's laptop, but text messages talking about giving his dad money. Text messages saying that he's broke and they have to move the family organization around a little bit so money can come in and go out in the right ways. Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Hunter's uncle. We saw Ashley Biden and a bunch of other Bidens taking part in the family business, but we're supposed to believe incrementally, even though it's been shown that Joe Biden first didn't know who his Hunter Biden's business partners were. Oh, now we know them. Oh, now we had dinner with them. Oh, we only talked about the weather. Oh, that WhatsApp message from Hunter Biden saying he was gonna tell his dad about one of the deals. Hunter Biden saying this about his dad, that about his dad, this about his uncle, making sure that all of the loose ends get tied up together. And we're still supposed to believe that there was nothing below board. Everything was above board.
Now, that's why I hope this impeachment inquiry actually allows him to get all of the bank records and all of the rest of the emails that the National Archives has. And who is the National Archives?
Government hired individuals.
Right. They are employees. They're not employees of the Democrats. They're not employees of the Republicans. They're federal employees that make a salary that when Congress gets a hold of them and asks them for emails, they should not be at liberty to decline to send the emails to them.
Because they're also public records.
Yes.
And that's their job, is to archive the public records. So why do they get to say no?
And keep the flow of information. Just like, where was this little pinhead that was adamantly against what was going on at Mar-a-Lago with the, quote, classified documents that were under lock and key, that the Secret Service was babysitting, that Trump did exactly what he was asked to do by them, which is lock them up. Yet that person threw such a tantrum that the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago and took all the documentation. Yet this same person wasn't up in arms for a bunch of classified documents that were at a VP's house at the time, which he did not have rights to those, nor could he declassify them according to everything I've read.
And some of the documents were even from his senatorial time.
Yes. So we definitely have that two-tiered system of justice, and maybe it'll work itself out in this thing. Like I said, through this impeachment inquiry, we'll really find out where the rubber meets the road, and we'll actually be able to, not we personally, but they'll be able to impeach him for high crimes and misdemeanors. And he actually should be impeached for what's going on at the southern border, which in a lot of experts' minds is treason.
Yes. Currently at the southern border, we are seeing the most amount of people cross than we have in the history. Unlawful crossings. And when Arizona attempted to protect its borders, we saw the federal government go and weld open parts of the wall to allow people to come in. They opened it up so they can come in. In Texas, we saw the floating barrier go up in the Rio Grande. And the federal government, Joe Biden's government, is suing Texas and Arizona because they put up those shipping containers to try and stop illegal immigration, suing them, saying that it's a federal related thing and that they are not allowed to do those things. Texas also put down razor wire to attempt to stop the inflow at different areas. Just within this last week, there's a video of CBP cutting the razor wire open and instructing people to come over, and even one where they fist bump each other, the CBP officer and those illegally coming into the country. We see direct support of this government under Joe Biden essentially encouraging illegal immigration. And what else did Joe Biden say? Well, we have Governor Hochul saying that too many people are coming to New York, please stop. You have Chicago mayor and governor saying too many people are coming, stop. In Los Angeles, they threatened to sue Texas and Florida and whomever else if they could catch them doing illegal actions by busing and flying illegal immigrants to Los Angeles.
What's illegal? They're just sending them to sanctuary cities like they asked for.
Yes. So they're not so sanctuary when it affects them directly. So what has Biden, through the government, threatened to do? Implement a Remain in Texas policy to make sure that only Texas is overrun. And that is what will happen if we have a remain in Texas policy. We have too many people who are attempting to enter the United States. I am not saying that none of them have a claim. If they present themselves at the border, you can claim asylum and you can make your case, you could be allowed in, and you can go through the process. There is a law for that. We have it on the books. As much as you may want to support economic migrants, being an economic migrant does not give you a legal avenue into the United States. And our representatives do a disservice when they call everyone asylum seekers. People who are being persecuted because of their Christian faith or their Muslim faith, persecution, asylum seekers. You wanting a better life? I don't have a problem with that, but you trying to illegally enter the United States? I have a problem with that.
Well, I think we're getting pretty close to reaching our max occupancy at the current time. So we need to shut the border down 100%, figure out who the ones are that have slipped through the system, analyze, and get rid of the bad people. Then go through and start allowing people that should and can come to the country come. But we've already let how many millions in already in the last 2.5 years?
Too many?
Yes.
Too many?
There's more Chinese that have come up through the southern border ever than the history of America, except for when they came over in the 1800s.
Well, and when we look at the fact that they caught people who support terrorism, terrorists, helping to bring people illegally into the country, we have another problem that we're not addressing. And they tried to play it off during one of the press secretary's little shindigs that, oh, but we caught them. This time, how many have we not caught?
Yeah, for every one, there's probably 10 that make it through that don't get caught.
And they've had cases where they allow somebody in but don't get the information back until after they allowed them in that they were in fact on the terrorist watch list. So how many are we allowing in? How many people do we have to allow to violate our laws? And we're just supposed to be okay with that. They kicked elderly people out of their home. And I understand that it wasn't like a single family home, but this is the facility that they called home. They kicked elderly people out in New York to house illegal immigrants. They started taking over gymnasium spaces.
And an airport.
In New York. In an airport. They started taking over the airport. They started taking over this. What is that building? It's a famous hotel that is no longer considered a hotel because they're housing illegal immigrants in New York. And they're taking over all these spaces. We still have a homeless crisis in this country. No matter how many billions of dollars that we've spent, we haven't been able to solve it. How about we work on solving our problems before we say we can take in the world's problems?
Because these people in D.C., these elites are so smart. They have the answer to everything.
More tax dollars?
A voting bloc. Because they know they'll juice them in the next 7 to 10 years. They'll have a whole extra million voters. That's why if they turn Texas blue, a Republican will never win a presidential election ever again.
I don't know. I feel like we're kind of already there with a Republican never winning a presidential election ever again. Because if you contest something that happens, they say that you're an election denier and you deserve to go to jail. And if you look at a lot of the lawsuits that were filed, don't get me wrong, some were absolutely frivolous. But a lot of the lawsuits that failed, it was you have no standing to file this lawsuit. So you as an individual, if you see voting irregularities or you were there as a vote helper, a voting helper, and you say, hey, I saw these irregularities and you file a lawsuit, you have no standing. So over and over again, they said the people had no standing in their local jurisdictions to file the lawsuits, or if it took too long, which in this case is essentially a month, if it took too long for the case to get in front of a judge and for you to make your arguments, and then the local area certified those election results, they called those lawsuits moot. Even if they certified the wrong person, once they certified, they essentially said, you have no more standing to file this lawsuit because the electoral people decided to certify the results anyway.
So what's the rush? What's the rush to certify the results if there's a question? Huh? What is the reasoning behind certifying so quickly? Just like the presidential election, isn't that one of the most important elections every 4 years ever?
Because I feel like it's like football. If some call should be overturned, let's say you didn't have control of the ball, the receiver did not have control of the ball, and the ref said that it was good, and they gave them a yardage. They try to get back behind the ball and hike it on the next play because in the last play, they can't challenge it.
Right.
Apparently, our elections are done like football.
So that's the
You
way
rush the
government does
second
it?
play, so the first play has
Can't
to
throw the
stand.
challenge flag.
Yes.
That way they can't throw the challenge flag. There's probably a lot of truth to that. But at some point in time, the rest of this country is either going to totally crumble like other nations around the world that have died on the vine and gone away, or we're going to figure this thing out and we're going to correct it. I don't know what.
I certainly hope figure out and correct, or else I guess we have no future.
Well, the good thing about it is it leaves a lot of fodder and a lot of crud for us to talk about because we get to talk about these knuckleheads. If they were all good and perfect, we'd have to pick a different subject matter, which we'd have to talk about how good they are and how terrible their suits look and their hairstyles, I guess.
Well, that would just be mean.
Very mean.
So I am reminded of a quote. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. And weak men create hard times. I would say we had good times. We created weak men. And now weak men are creating hard times.
Good quote. So I wonder, since we still have a homeless crisis and we're allowing hundreds of thousands up south of the border, if all these organizations are now going to divert their money from homeless, to give it to homeless who come up from south of the border.
Probably. They'll probably get government grants to do that.
Oh, so what that means is more taxes.
Yes. And there's never enough tax dollars. I don't know if you've noticed this, that every time they want to do a program, but they say there's not enough money, they talk about a new tax. Usually it's the generic tax the rich. And then they give the group of people that they want to tax, but they talk about the 50 different types of programs that they want to do, and they're all going to take it from the same
pool?
From the same pool of money. And so they're at like 850 billion% of what they're attempting to collect by saying that, oh, don't worry, we will only take it from billionaires. Oh, don't worry, we'll only take it from people making above $100 million. Oh, don't worry. But yet, if you look at our tax code and a lot of what happens, they've dialed it back to where we start getting hit at lower and lower dollar amounts. So if we're only talking about millionaires and billionaires and the ultra elite, why is it our graduated tax system phase outs start happening with people making $75,000 a year? Why would there ever be a phase out on someone making $75,000 or a family making $150 or a head of household being $125? Or I believe Obamacare, the extra Medicare tax or whatever it was, started at $250,000. Don't get me wrong. $250,000 would be a great salary. Absolutely agreed. But when we're talking about rich elitists, we seem to look at the people making $75,000 and above.
How dare that firefighter not pay his fair share. Oh, wait a minute. Isn't Biden an elitist?
He is. He tries to play the friendly bro Joe.
Right. Well, hasn't he been in the public's eye or doing public service pretty much his whole career?
Yes, sir.
Yet he owns 5 multi-million-dollar homes
Beachfront property.
and lives the lifestyle of a very wealthy person. I listened to
Absolutely.
somebody on the congressional House floor the other day talk about that very thing, and it's mathematically improbable that without one of these 20 shell companies and Mr. Hunter pumping money into his daddy's accounts that he has that kind of graft.
Right. I don't disagree.
Irrespective of the baloney, oh, I taught at X university for 1 year, which I never showed up for, and they paid me $500,000 and baloney.
Right. He tried to claim that it was of his own doing, but it got made public. Guess what? Because of all the text messages, we get to see that money was moving around constantly. Joe Biden met with Hunter Biden's business partners. They even called Joe Biden the big guy. They called him the brand. You can't be the brand unless you're the brand.
You know what's interesting?
That's how they made the money.
You know who else is the brand?
Who's the brand?
The Clintons. Because that little organization that they started was very corrupt as well, and there was influence peddling there, and they got caught. And I believe the year was around 2017. Don't quote me on that exact year, but they actually ended up shutting the organization down because of the corruption. And guess what just started up this year, just a couple months ago?
Clinton Foundation.
The Clinton Foundation, and they're trying to get funding to be one of the organizations that goes over and helps rebuild Ukraine.
Can we help rebuild the United States of America? Can we put an America First policy? There is nothing wrong with focusing on your home, because if your home, and I'm talking about your own personal household, is falling apart, you cannot help the world. So focus on the home, focus on the family.
Agreed? Agreed.
So let's talk about California. So something that we saw pass in California was AB 957, which would have given the parent who affirms a child's gender identity custody of said child. Gavin Newsom vetoed it. They're claiming that it appears he vetoed because he'll be running for president and wants to be a more moderate in the eyes of people of the United States until, of course, he gets elected. Then he'll go on his merry way of being a radical. But something else that came through that did get passed, $20 an hour. Fast food restaurants.
Good thing I'm not eating there anymore.
Fast food restaurants, if they own 60 or more, unless they bake their own bread. Weird carve out. So we will see our food prices go up again here in California because of that. Right now is prime time with California on either approving the bills or vetoing the bills. It turns out in California you can, as a governor, put your signature on it. That means you agree with the passing and it becomes law. You can put your signature and veto it. So you disagree with it, you veto it. And apparently if you don't do either one, it also becomes law. So we will see what Gavin Newsom actually puts his signature on for approving or vetoing. But we have quite a number of laws out there. California has a right to repair law in which there are, again, exemptions like baking bread in the restaurant industry. Sony will be exempted from supplying customers with self-repair kits, as California's new law leaves console makers out of the equation. So we could be seeing that you have the right to repair your own home electronics, except for these video game console makers. That will be left out. So Senate Bill 244, if you'd like to go read it yourself, it was It has the support of environmental groups and self-repair advocates so people can fix these items themselves. Think about your iPhone. When something happens, you have to take it to another place to repair it because they have special
No,
screws
I
and
may I
special.
mail mine back to China, and I let that little 8-year-old kid that built it for me go ahead and repair it, since they have intimate knowledge of how the thing works, all the inner workings of the phone.
Haha. So, but companies are going to be required to make service and repair facilities, documentation, and parts available for anyone who wants to fix their own device at home. And it will have to be if it's hit the market within the last 7 years and if the device costs $100 or more. So now in California, we will have the right to repair as long as they didn't receive a special exemption.
What's interesting, who sits around and thinks about this stuff? I would never thought in a million years that it's that big of a deal that we need to pass a law that says you can repair your own stuff and manufacturers must provide you with the means to do so. We have hundreds of thousands of homeless. We got soaring food prices, soaring gas and diesel prices. Groceries are through the roof, and we're worried about passing a law for game consoles and other devices.
Well, game consoles, you still don't have a right to repair.
Right. You know
But yes,
why?
special interest. Somebody lined the pockets.
Somebody lined the pockets of somebody that gave them a carve out.
That's one thing that really bothers me is these special carve-outs. If you want to make a right to repair bill, if you think that landfills are getting too full with all of these electronic devices that people cannot, that people don't have the right to fix themselves because...
Wait a minute. I thought all that stuff was recyclable. And that's the interesting thing right there, because when you go buy a television now, or you go buy a couch or a mattress, you pay a recycling fee up front.
So if I swear that I'm going to fix it myself, can I pay the unrecycling fee?
You should have to, or you should be allowed to get your unrecycled fee back.
They want you to pay all these fees because they want the money. That's all it is. It's a money grab.
Flow.
It's a money grab. But they want to have these right to repair. As soon as you start giving carve-outs, special interest is written all over that. Why?
Absolutely.
It's all fake.
Yes, it is. It's all baloney.
All phony baloney.
Phony baloney.
This has been a podcast produced and edited by the Dirt Sailor Duo. Mark and Shannon are a father-daughter team who both served in the United States Navy. This production is protected by copyright laws. Until next time, anchors away.